everybody.
Yeah, 'cause otherwise you're sitting there.
Tonight is Tuesday, February 4th. Joint meeting, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen. I'm going to call the Board of Finance to order, and Mika.
I will call the meeting for the Board of Selectmen to order.
And we are going to start with the tax assessor. Good evening. 1160 in your budget book.
Good evening.
How are you?
Hi, Marcia.
Exhausted.
How are you? Oh, all right. So my budget is pretty straightforward. I just there's not too many increases, just a salary increase. There was a little bit of movement between the books, the NADA books that we had for pricing guides, and then some of that was moved to postage, and I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not
Yeah, it's pretty
too many-
straightforward.
yeah.
The numbers are not
I mean,
alarming.
what we have is just mostly education, the car allowance for doing the inspections, and going to meetings, and dues for associations, and our vendor doing the grand list books, the new Price Digest online pricing, and that's pretty much it for the budget.
Okay, so I assume you also want to talk to us a little bit about reval.
Sure. I know that's what you really want.
Was I subtle? You can tell?
Okay, so reval. Whew. It was a success, you know. We've got our values up to the current market since 2019. On average for residential, it was about a 60% increase to the values. There was a, you know, it ranged from probably a -4 change to about 600% change. And those are, you know, the higher range percentages are people that were new construction, that were under construction, and now they're complete, or they did a complete remodel.
I was gonna say 600% is not nothing.
Well, that one was a
Yeah.
brand new house.
Now I get it.
That's what the 600 was.
Yeah.
Right, and then there was some that may have been valued low back in the last reval, and now they're brought up to the current market. So pretty much we had about 887 residential properties that were under 50% increase. The average 1,331 were about 50 to 70%, so in that 60 and around. And then about 907 that were 70 and above. So, but you can't really, you could look at the percent of increase. Everybody is coming in asking about percent of increase because their neighbor was only 40 and they're 60 and they have the same house. But it's not the percent of increase that you need to look at. You need to look at what is your market value compared to your neighbor.
Right.
Are they comparable, and do you have comparable houses? Because like I said, if they were undervalued in 19 or overvalued in 19, there's that difference coming up to the 24. So with that said, we went, just get this one. So 23 grand list was at the total. Now this is all residential, commercial, personal property, motor vehicles. We were at $1,155,827,263, and now we're at $1,681,121,748, which is about a 45% increase overall. And then I had presented Tony and Mika with my annual memo, which
It's in their file, so
Right.
you can all see that. Yeah.
which that if we use the current mill rate of 46.43 and the mill rate cap, that would be an additional 24 million in tax dollars at the current mill rate.
Which, but the mill, correct, but the
Right.
mill rate going forward has not been set. I'm
Correct.
just saying that for the
Right.
public, so that they understand that.
Right. So at the current, so you can't have you can't have
Right,
a higher, you can't have income. So you bring that down to, you know, for that increase, your mill rate comes down, depending on what the budget is. So, let's see, I do have, in the office, we do have the, revaluation cost manual. So this will give, it's 166 pages, and it breaks down the reval, and it tells you what cost tables they use for land rates, for residential, commercial, what neighborhood you're in, what adjustments are made for age per square foot, if it's average condition, good, very good, and I believe there may be some, you know, something in there about the extras like pools, decks, patios, and things like that. So, let's see. Notes. Personal property did go down. Again, we have a high rate of non-filers. So we have about 630 personal property accounts and about 160 don't file, because they just figure I'm going to give an estimate of assessment. If they're willing to pay that, then they're not really concerned about that, which in the future I would like to look at personal property audits on a contingency basis, which I've done in the past in Milford when I was there. And what we do is you take however many personal property that you want to have audited, and if you could get the company to do contingency, what they do is they don't charge you for the audits until you get the payment for any increases in that you find, because the audit goes back 3 years from the date of the initial letter that goes out that says we're going to conduct an audit. So it would be that current grand list plus 3 years back. So anything they find as omitted property would be a 25% penalty plus the omitted property going back 3 years, and they take the whatever is collected from that finding, they'll take a percentage of that. So that's something if we could look forward to in the future on a contingency basis. And motor vehicles did also go down. The reason for that is because, one, residential trailers are no longer assessed, and two, we moved from a assessment based on fair market value, based on J.D. Power, what's the average selling price, to a depreciated value of MSRP. So the people who had newer cars actually didn't, some had gone up and some had gone down because they start at 85% of the MSRP. And then it goes down to about 15% until it bottoms out at 500 assessment. So that was a decrease of about 10%, 10% in a motor vehicle. And that was the reason for that.
Did you want to highlight anything else, or can we ask a few questions?
You could ask me some
Does
questions.
anybody have any questions either about the budget or the grand list changes or any of their reports?
Just a quick question.
Beth?
Why do residential trailers go down? Is that, are they considered residential, should they jump into the real estate part or just?
No, residential trailers per part of the act that they put through are no longer assessed. So if it's used for personal use, now this is the trailers, utility trailers. Personal use utility trailers are no longer taxable.
Even though people are living in them as homes?
No, the mobile homes are.
Mobile homes, okay.
Yeah,
I guess
the
I don't
RVs and
understand what a
campers.
residential trailer is.
So utility trailer, like a landscaping trailer, but
Got
not
it,
for a
okay.
landscaper.
Okay.
Just something that you put,
Boat trailer, things of that nature?
boat trailers, yeah, are
Interesting.
exempt. ATVs and, but anyone that is using their trailer for commercial purposes is taxable, which is very difficult to discern because DMV just gives you a list of trailers, and I have to determine whether or not they're used for commercial use
Yeah.
or not. So the majority of them had come off. If anyone has any, question if they got one and they only use it for personal purposes, then I can fix that. But I mean, it was just, I had to see, do they have a business in town?
Right.
I looked online to see if they were landscapers. I tried to, you know, make sure that I was putting the right people on, but some of the trailers that are over 5,000 gross vehicle weight, I'm like, well, usually you don't have 7, 8, 10,000 gross vehicle weight for personal use. So most likely I put those on the commercial, as commercial use until I'm told otherwise.
Sheila,
Thank you.
you had a question.
I did. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about the commercial industrial, so the personal property tax piece. Is it typical that that is the value of business property is not calculated the same way as the real estate? Because
Right.
we're going down, but is that because we have fewer businesses or just the value of businesses generally are not as increased as residential property?
Right, so business personal property is based on original cost on a depreciated schedule. So if they started a business, 8 years ago, they were at the highest, 95% of original cost, including transportation, installation, and tax. Then it goes down to the lowest at 30%. So 95, 90, 85, 80, down to 30%. So after 8 years, they're at 30% if they buy nothing new.
Right.
The-
So does that account for the way it's appearing in the grand list now? It's a lesser number.
Right, because we have about the
Because
same amount of
equipment is aging.
businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then if there's any, in prior years that, every other year there's a business that's a manufacturer that doesn't file their manufacturing, but then they do the next year, so sometimes they get an exemption and sometimes they don't. So, they have to be consistent in filing that annually.
Other questions?
Marcia, just as relates to Toll Brothers are now our fourth largest tax. I'm just curious to know how we tax that or how we assess that. Is it's just a combination or a cumulative value of all of the properties and what they're worth as they're being built? And from a tax perspective, is the individual property owner, unit owner, the ones who are paying the taxes, is that a compilation of all of what they're all paying? Do you understand
Right.
what I mean?
So this, the top 10 is what did Toll own on October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So if they owned, 20 of the 26 properties, they got the bill for that real estate.
Okay.
Plus it's whatever personal property they have,
They're like
that's
their
there, plus
equipment and things of that
Right.
nature.
Plus they have the clubhouse and the pool, which was under construction, which is theirs. So next year, most likely, they won't be there because the majority of those properties on that side sold. They'll be starting, they started the other side. So it'll switch.
So whatever this assessment value is here, the residents who have purchased and are now owners of those properties would be in addition to this in terms of,
Would be
Assess-
actually paying the portion of this.
okay,
So on October 1st, Toll was the owner. If they sold it
I guess
after,
as of October
the new
1st.
owner will be getting the bill, but on October 1st, Toll was the owner, so that's what their assessment was.
Okay.
Other
So,
questions?
Yes, I have a question regarding the grand list. The vacant land is 0.75%. Can you just clarify, is that public-private vacant land? Like, how is vacant land defined? Buildable lots that have no buildings on them?
right, it would, as long as it's not classified as open space, farm, forest, would be a vacant, it could be buildable or non-buildable, and it could be commercial but there's not too many that we have listed as vacant. I think there was only, let me just check this. 2024.
So it could be a vacant piece of property that's in a wetland that can't be built on, but you're gonna pay,
Sure, I'm
it's
just
gonna be
surprised
reflective.
it's less than 1%. And then, is public utility, I assume that includes the regional water authorities?
Well, Regional Water Authority is on a pilot program along with,
So it doesn't include,
right, that's
okay,
separate.
okay.
Their assessments are calculated on the pilot program sheet, but not included in the residential commercial.
So we send them a bill each year, essentially, that they have to pay.
So only, can you help me to understand that? Only for these street these addresses we're seeing depicted here?
Correct.
Okay.
It's, see totals at the bottom? 9.6, you know, 12
$12,400,000,
correct.
yes.
So then I'll convert that to, with the mill rate, to a tax, to a bill, a pilot bill, and then we'll invoice them and they'll pay us.
And for
It's
clarification.
not considered, it's not through the taxes system.
Sorry, and for clarification for the public, pilot doesn't mean test case, it means payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
Correct.
So it's, there's dollars there,
Okay.
because that can be confusing.
I guess I just don't understand why it's only a small number of, like, does RWA own 615 Amity Road? Is that their property?
Correct. Yeah.
That's their property?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. I was definitely confused by the
funny
pilot.
'cause it-
And
oh.
I was thinking like these are homes enrolled in some
No,
type
no,
of
no, no, no.
program.
Payment in lieu of taxes. So
Okay.
It is
Okay.
a general.
So, okay. All right,
Um,
thank you.
And it is confusing because it looks like these are residential addresses.
Yes.
Right.
When in fact they are chunks of land.
Very large parcel.
Yeah,
Right.
large parcels.
And their values may not be as high as a vacant parcel because it's just exit, it's not used for anything.
Nor is it permitted
besides-
to be used for
right,
anything.
Right.
Just except for,
Yeah,
you know, the towers that run through, with the wires.
Right, it's a lot of rights of way and
Right.
easements and things like that. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Javier,
Hi, Marcia. The formula that's used to calculate motor vehicle value, assessed value, is that set by the state?
Yes. Yep, there's a depreciation schedule that was set in the Public Act that starts at the 85% and down to 15%.
Got it, okay. And that recently changed, right? That was because it was different, I wanna say 2
It
years ago.
just changed with, special legislation in '24.
Got it, thank you. And then could you help me understand what's involved in a personal property tax audit?
So what they do is, if we hire a company, you contact the company and ask them, where are your books and papers located? So they'll review all their balance sheets, their tax returns, any books and papers, purchase orders, any invoices. Plus they'll also go to the property, just to do a walkthrough to verify, you know, if it's a manufacturer, okay, they have, you know, this manufacturing equipment. They'll look at the size of the offices and, you know, pretty much say how many desks and chairs are there, does it coincide with what is on their
Okay,
tax information.
thank you. And then does that only apply to businesses, or would individuals also be subject to that as well?
Well, usually we just do businesses because pretty much people in their home, you can't have too much in your home besides a computer, desk, chair, maybe a filing cabinet. But this is for larger or older companies that in accounting, reporting, and assessing reporting are different. So accountants will write off assets and they'll have zero value.
Right.
And they'll come off of their books. But in assessing, there is no zero value. Everything is 30% of original cost new. So that's you can't just write things off. Plus there's like capitalization thresholds where they could buy 10, if it's $500, they could buy 10 desks at $500 and not even declare them. So we're looking for things like that. But it's not only just to find things that aren't reported, there are people that report things that aren't supposed to be reporting, like certain leasehold improvements. You know, in my experience, we've given back hundreds of thousands in assessment, because these large companies were declaring, you know, like their flooring or, you know, carpet, that's not a leasehold improvement. Maybe if it was special lighting or special flooring where you needed to put heavy machinery on it and had to have certain thickness of the cement floor, that would be, you know, for that business. But
Got it. Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
sure, but we don't have that many large businesses, so,
Yeah.
you know, it wouldn't be too.
you should have said you depreciate that instead of appreciate that, but that's okay.
But
I'm here all week, anything else, anybody, other questions, thoughts from Marcia? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Marcia. It's been a long season.
Is Marcia doing the Board of Assessment Appeals? or do you-
Yep, no,
Oh.
Board of
Oh, do you
Assessment
want
Appeals.
Assessment Appeals, yeah, that's a different tab number, that's 1160.
There's not much to it, but
Not mu- it's pretty much the same. So, theirs is just, they get a stipend for the hearings, and for the letters and, out to the Board of Appellants, and correspondence. So it's the board members and the, clerical that takes the
just
minutes.
the minutes, right.
Right. And they'll be meeting in March. The appeal forms are available due February 20th.
Yeah, the numbers are not too big here. Any questions about the Board of Assessment Appeals? My guess is they're going to be busy.
Yeah, from what I've seen on the calendar, they're gonna be meeting a lot.
Is that fair?
Well, we'll see on the 20th, because we'll receive all the appeals in the office. And, I mean, when they did the informals with the reval company, there was about 500 appeals with the informals. So, I'm not quite sure. how
I'm a
many
process
people-
person. I love that there's a process. That's excellent.
Right,
It is important to communicate that folks need to submit their appeals by the 20th.
Right.
We're trying to put them,
Yeah.
yeah, we're
And-
trying to put that out as much as possible, but if your neighbors or anybody asks, it's really important that they submit their appeals by the 20th.
right.
By February 20th.
By February
And
20th,
it's also
correct.
really important to say you're not appealing the taxes. You're
Appealing
appealing
these.
the market value, and they do have to provide proof to the board, showing that their property is not valued in accordance with everyone else.
Got it.
So,
Well, that's important public information for everybody to have, so I'm glad we mentioned that. Any other questions on the Board of Assessment Appeals, Sheila?
Yeah, so that is actually, what you're proposing in the budget for that is for the motor vehicle, assessment appeal process that happens in the fall, right? Because the one we're talking about is in this current fiscal, not in your budget for next year. Is that right?
the appeals are for this,
March, but that's the
for
current
this
process.
collection, which will be July and January of '26.
Right, but
Right.
you're right,
Not
this
this
budget's for the following year. So
Right.
it'd be for the following,
Right, for the following year.
So in the fall is motor vehicle, and then again next spring would
Correct.
be real
Right.
estate, okay.
next spring, right?
And this, so that number that you're projecting is not based on what's gonna happen in February deadline. That's your current budget, and you're fine.
Right, the amount of the
Right. We'll see how many we get.
stipends, right,
How many hours we're
Right,
paying the time.
right, right.
right. Yeah, that wasn't really accounted for last
Right,
time.
right, that's
We
right.
weren't thinking
We have an adjustment or two.
that far.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
sounds good. Anything else for Marcia? Thank you.
No, Thank you.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
Next is the Fire Commission. 12:30, your choice if you want to do capital first or operations. We're open.
Why don't we do capital first?
Okay.
12:30.
So, I just have one thing to add. If it is possible for next year, maybe we do, because we have a large capital outlay, and it does take time to go through. Rather than rush, if we can maybe come for capital and then come back for operating like we used to. I
No
know
promises.
it's a lot to consume and go over, and I don't wanna bore you with everything, but sometimes it's easier that way. So the first one I have is hydrant painting. So we had a lot of complaints throughout the years about the way the hydrants look. We went out, we got a price on it. It's roughly $84,000 to go and clean all the hydrants, scrape them down, paint them, and we put that in for next year. But I'm gonna leave that up to you whether we wanna do that this year or next year, but the hydrants haven't been painted in 30 years. So they're in definitely need of painting and some TLC. Is there any questions on the hydrant painting? And we have roughly 140 hydrants in town, just put it in perspective. So roughly 10% of the town is covered by hydrants.
Sean, you have that in the 27 budget, correct?
Yeah, so.
I'm
being
still
next
finding
year-
it. I know
Yeah, I
you're
don't
going
s-
out of
I
order a
actually
little
don't-
bit.
I
because
don't
you have-
see it.
Thank you.
He's going in the order of the newest one that was added yesterday.
At the top there.
So the other important thing I want to just brief you on is, I know our budget, we're looking for quite a bit of money this year in capital. We're actually not looking for it all in capital this year, but we need to talk about this because we need to start ordering this stuff. And in the fire service, let's take an engine, for example. An engine takes, if we were to order it today, we'd see it in between 24 and 30 months. And then the payment would be once we take delivery or a year after, depending on how we finance, lease purchase, or whatever. So when we look at these columns, you can't look at 26 capital costs because they're truly not accurate. We're not looking for all this money this year, but we need to order these trucks because these trucks have a 2 to 3 year build time on them, the majority of them. Next thing up is
Sean, I'm
the
sorry, just to stay on the
hydrants.
hydrants for a quick second.
Sure.
Just could you explain again, because I want to be very specific, because this is something that's, our office has gotten a number of requests on. What do we do to the hydrants in terms of painting them? It's, because obviously 140
So-
units at $84,000 comes out to a lot of money, and people say, why, how could it possibly cost thousands of dollars to
They
paint a
come
hydrant?
in, they sandblast the hydrant, they clean the hydrant of all the debris, clean it all up right down to the bare metal, and then they primer it and paint the hydrant.
And what's the real benefit other than it looking better? Like, does it have a function?
It just keeps, it's like anything that has bare metal on it, once you coat it, it stops it from rusting or corroding any farther. But
The rust can
from
cause a
our
problem.
standpoint of getting water out of it, it's not doing, it doesn't do anything.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the hydrants?
Why don't you go through all of the capital if you can, and then we'll circle back. It's a little
Sure.
more efficient to do that.
Okay, so the next thing is HVAC. We put a $150,000 placeholder in. So the building, the firehouse, is not a new firehouse anymore. It's 16 years old plus. We have some issues with the building management system within it. We were having issues with the building management system before October. We had the microgrid, and the microgrid basically, when we took some power hits, it basically finished off the building management system. So we're having trouble regulating heat and air conditioning within the building. So, and when we get to operating, we're gonna see how that actually hurts us, and where I believe we need to go out for an RFQ right now and look to replace that system. We're spending roughly $3,000 to $4,000 more a month because we can't control the heat and air conditioning within the building. So it is a big number, and we'll see that when we get to the operating costs. Engine 2, that's a 2003 engine. It's one of the first attack engines, one of the attack engines that we have. A truck usually, an engine usually lasts us about 25 years if we're lucky. NFPA says in a department like ours, in a rural department, we should be replacing them 20 years. We usually try to get 25 years out of them. Some go at 24 years, some go at 25 years. We hardly get past 26 years, so if we were to order, we have to order that engine now, and we'll see it in a few years. So we put a price tag of 1.3 on it based on what numbers are going for engines right now. So the next one is car 21, the chief's vehicle, and car 22 is the assistant chief's vehicle. These vehicles respond to the incidents. They go directly to the scene. One car is a 2011 Chevy Suburban. It's got well over 100,000 miles on it. We're having a lot of rot onto it. This car was in the budget to be replaced last year. It got bumped last year by these boards, and that car is in dire need of being replaced because we're gonna start dumping some big money into that vehicle. The other one is a 2017 Chevy Suburban. in this past year, we're having computer issues with the main brain of the computer where when you're driving along, everything will shut off, even the emergency lights. The car won't shut off, but all the computer and everything is having issues. And so everything will go dead, and then you have to wait for it to reboot, and then the lights will come back on, the radio will come back up, and actually the dashboard and everything will come back up. We brought it to the shop. It was their recommendation that to replace the vehicle as soon as we can, because it doesn't make sense to try to replace the computer because it could be somewhere in the wiring and they're not gonna be able to locate it for a reasonable number. So we'd be talking about a main harness and everything else throughout the entire vehicle.
Was that vehicle purchased new at the
It
time?
was.
Because that's not old, 20s, I mean,
Well,
For-
2017 to 25, you're looking at 8 years.
yeah. I'm surprised by how little that's lasted.
These are emergency vehicles, so when you need them, they're driven hard and they're used. So the idling on these vehicles are big also. So it's not just the mileage, it's the idling and it's what you're doing.
Thank you.
Fire hose, we put $25,000 in. We have to test our fire hose every single year. It's an NFPA requirement, and every year we end up losing hose, but we're usually pretty good at keeping hose. So we have hose that just failed from like 1998. So we're trying to get as much time out of the hose, and hose replacement usually should happen, I believe it's every 15 years. So we're getting a lot out of our hose, and we're trying to maintain it. We wash it after every use. We dry it, we keep it maintained in temperature controlled storage, and so we're doing pretty good on that. At $25,000, that's not just hose, but that's adapters, that's nozzles and stuff like that. Just to put it in perspective, when you go to a fire and you see large diameter hose, the big yellow hose in the middle of the road, a length of that is about $1,200 to $1,400 a piece. So when we look at $25,000, it's really not a lot of money and not a lot of hose that we replace when we look for this. Radio communications upgrade. This is the money that we put in every year that we've already got these radios, and we end that in FY28. So this has already been budgeted for. Air packs is the same deal. We have until 28, and that would be complete. Aerial apparatus. So let me just skip that one for a minute. Engine 9, we took delivery on, and these are just our payments that we have to pay this year. And engine 3 we have our last payment due this year on engine 3 that we took delivery on in 2020. The aerial, we put a placeholder on. Orange just purchased an aerial, or is in the process of purchasing an aerial, and their aerial is roughly 2.3 million. That's roughly where we're gonna end up being in all the neighboring departments. This is where the number is on aerial devices, whether it be a platform, a ladder, or whatever else. This is extremely important. In 2017, we had a 1976 Miracle in France 55-foot telesquirt, and it was purchased back in the 70s, and was deemed at that time we needed an aerial. Since the 1970s to today, we have grown dramatically. So we have a lot of homes in town and we have a slide that actually shows it, which are better than 4,000 feet, 4,500 feet. We have a home in town that's just about 10,000 feet. We don't have regular homes. We have mini buildings, basically, and all the different types of construction that are used today. This is why you need an aerial device to keep everybody safe. The times of throwing ladders on houses and going on roofs, they're still there, but you have to be extremely careful, because depends on what the house is made out of and the material it's made out of, you gotta be extremely careful. So That plus the town just approved, what I understand is a 4-story building.
Town has not approved 4-story building.
Okay, so I can tell you I have a print for a 4-story building.
There's
at the
an
firehouse.
application.
There's an application for a 4-story building at the firehouse, and when we looked at it, I looked at it with the fire marshal. It's a 4-story building. I don't know if anybody has seen it or understands this, because I didn't until I saw the print. It's a 4-story building with a garage underneath it. So in theory, it's 5 stories, and we're 71 feet up in the air, straight up. So when you do the math and everything, a 100-foot ladder truck is really not out of the realm here, because you have to figure you have to be 1.5 times the collapse zone away from the building. Plus you have parking spots and shrubbery and everything else. So when you go up, you have to have that type of stuff. We don't even have a ground ladder right now that would reach the top floor of that structure that's being proposed or up for proposal right now. What's concerning about this is if this does go through, and I was under the impression it is going through,
That's wrong.
okay?
Well, the zoning went through.
The zoning.
The zoning was
I'm sorry,
amended.
The zoning went through.
Correct.
Okay, not the
The,
structure.
the structure application is March 3rd, the
Right,
hearing.
so the zoning went through, so that means if we look at it, these could be popping up anywhere there's city water and city sewer. So.
Which
this-
is,
Which is quite a bit. You have the flats, you have the up where they're building now.
2% of the property in town. But
Right now.
Different discussion.
So you're identifying that there could be a separate set of issues
Absolutely.
in terms of your.
So we need to be
capital
prepared,
outlay,
but
yeah.
if we were to order an aerial truck today, an aerial truck is roughly 3 years out. 3 years to 42 months, maybe even longer.
And to that point, can I ask just a little clarification?
Sure.
On what an aerial truck is? I'm trying not to picture you flying around.
No.
I think what's happening is that there's some
It's
sort
a
of
ladder truck.
elevation on the truck. It takes you up in some sort of a platform, correct?
Yep,
So that you don't have to lean a ladder up against the building and crawl all over the roof, kind of a thing, right?
correct, and it's
Okay.
safer.
Thank you.
So the
Thank you.
current truck we had we purchased a used truck back in 2017, and it was really like a Band-Aid fix for 4 or 5 years until we would be able to purchase a new one. And those 4 or 5 years went by. The truck is currently out right now. It's got hydraulic leaks from dry rot. Truck's a 1992 LTI. It's not gonna last much longer. We're trying to baby this thing along and use it when we absolutely need it, where we should be running this truck a lot more than we are right now. And the reason being is we're holding on to this thing for the dire emergency here that we really truly need to replace this truck now. Because even if we buy it today, we're not seeing it for probably 3.5 years out before we actually take delivery on this truck. And we need to start acting now on these capital expenditures.
Okay, anything else on capital? Otherwise, I'm sure people have questions.
Sure,
I have a question.
sure.
Am I correct that one of these engines we bought off lease from another fire department about 10 years ago?
No.
What am I remembering?
So about 10 years ago, when we before we purchased this one, there was a truck that was available that was down in Delaware, and we were able to make a deal with Delaware. The Board of Selectmen sent us down there, and we made a deal for $910,000, and the truck was 2 years old.
Right, that's what I remember.
That same truck today, and at that time, a brand-new truck was $1.5 million
Right.
for that truck. That truck today is hovering right around $2.8 million.
And we have that truck.
We do not have that truck. The Board of Finance shot that down, and it didn't go through the Board of Finance. It went through the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, okay. I knew there was something.
Right.
Thank you.
So then the association went out and purchased the 1992 truck just to get us by, so we can try to be as safe as we can.
Okay.
And that's 32 years old, that truck.
1992 to 2025, yeah.
33.
That's an old truck.
Other questions?
So the other truck, when we had the La France, we got rid of it right around the same time, so.
Sean, is there space to store the aerial apparatus?
Yes.
Vehicle?
Yes.
Okay.
We have one in there now. The one we have now is, we try to get it a little shorter than what we currently have, but we didn't have a choice. We needed to do something with it.
Thank you.
Question that comes up with the aerial apparatus in particular, it relates to mutual aid. Can you just explain to us a little bit about how mutual aid would work in a situation if we needed something at a single structure
Sure,
like you were
so-
describing?
Right, so mutual aid is not your first line of defense.
Correct.
Mutual aid is to help support what you're doing and how, okay? So if we were to call for mutual aid, let's say wherever, right?
Orange.
If we called Orange, we're gonna get there, confirm that we need it, but you gotta remember, by that time, all of our apparatus is going in, we're laying basically portable water mains on top of the road and on the street to supply what we have, the fire load that we currently have. When we call Orange, you gotta expect roughly a 20-minute time, because they're coming off the post road, and even going lights and sirens, it's not like you're going 80 miles an hour, you're going probably about 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour. It's still gonna take you, by the time they get, and they're a volunteer department, by the time they get there, get to the apparatus and come off the post road, you're looking at probably at least 20 minutes. Now, a fire doubles in size, fact, every 30 seconds. So if you got a confirmed structure fire and you're growing 30 seconds, 20 minutes is a lifetime. 5 minutes or 8 minutes by the time we get there, usually our first truck's on scene. Engine usually in about a little over 8 minutes, depends on where it is in town. That fire has grown that much in 8 minutes, let alone 20. So once we deem the need for it and call for it, you're 20 minutes out. And then your other big problem that you have is, it's not like you're moving cars out of the way. You have to move trucks and water mains out of the street to be able to get a truck close enough so you could utilize it. And as you could see, like what you saw in LA and everything else, how quick fires are moving and how quick they spread depending on the weather conditions, whether it's windy out that day or not. It almost defeats the purpose. At that point, then you're gonna end up using that truck more as a master stream, meaning you're gonna put the ladder up in the air and start spraying water as a defensive mode to help try to put the fire out.
So, Chief, I know we did an assessment a couple of years ago about things that are happening with regard to climate change and some threats that we're facing. Would you say that wildfire threats they're a significant threat in our town? Is that right?
So yeah, there's a lot of threats in our town. So wildfires are one of them, and the reason being is, I mean, we all saw the tornado that hit Bethany a few years ago. You have the hurricanes that we've been through in the last 10, 13 years. We've had quite a bit of weather events happen in town. So with that, you have trees that are dropping around town, and that they stay there basically, right? So they're rotting out, they're drying up, and we had luckily we had really no major issues when we had that big drought, and the fire danger was extremely high this fall. But the threat is definitely there. It happened around Connecticut. One firefighter lost his life based on it. But the weather events, what we see they're not as frequent, but when they happen, they're bigger. So when we get a windstorm, we're getting a significant windstorm where we used to go to 5 or 10 calls. We're probably going to 30 calls, 35 calls. Depends on how big the event is. If we have a hurricane, we could be doing 100 calls that day. So depends on what we're doing. Yes, the threat is there, and climate change is happening.
Right. And mutual aid, if everyone else is experiencing the same thing, is going to be helpful.
So yeah, so mutual aid. Let's take, even if we call New Haven for a ladder truck that's coming off of Grand Ave. Once again, if the truck is available, they'll send it. I had talks with the chief a few years back, and that was the situation they're in. If they're not on a call and they're available, they'll send the truck. But remember, it's probably going to take them 25 minutes to get up here, plus 30 minutes to get up here to even assist us. And we were thinking about, when we had the JCC fire, about calling New Haven in to try to get up here. But Once again, you have a major scene like that, you have apparatus everywhere, you have water mains on the road, we had a water issue at the GCC, we're laying a line across the Amity Road. At that point, what do? We're fighting the fire, we got the sprinkler system charged, we have guys inside. Do we shut water down, shut operations down just to try to get an aerial truck in to assist us at that point, or is we're already in it for the long haul? That's what it comes down to.
How much does a sprinkler system help?
So a sprinkler system's not designed to put the fire out. A sprinkler system's designed to try to contain the fire and to allow the occupants in the building to get out. It's not meant to put the fire out, just so we're clear on that. Because that's a big misconception, what a sprinkler system actually should be doing.
Other questions on capital, or shall we have?
But just to go on with the sprinkler system, with the building, with the way things are being built nowadays, a sprinkler system can become overrun quick. So if we got a heavy fire load in the building and we're only popped a few heads, the system could basically malfunction and fail because it can't keep up with the fire load, and then the sprinkler system becomes overwhelmed and you lose it. That's why having the equipment that you need to do it is extremely important. Yes.
Thank you.
You mentioned the prospect of a possible tall building, a 4-story building. My question is, a peaked roof versus a flat roof, is there a difference for the fire department?
So, a flat roof, I think it depends when we talk about peaked. So are we looking at trusses or are we looking at conventional frame? So trusses, there's no ridge board, so if we were to throw a ladder up onto that, that roof is probably gonna fail a lot quicker than a conventionally framed roof, and that's a fact, because there's no gusset plates, you're using conventional lumber, 2x material. Flat roofs create another issue, because if you got a fire load underneath, and once again, whether you have steel or you have wood, you also have to look at what's on the roof. So usually if you have a flat roof in a building like that, I'm assuming mechanicals and everything else would go up there, so you're adding that weight on top of the fire load underneath, which is also a problem. So we kind of tend more toward, we like the peaked roofs better than flat roofs, but once again, neither are good.
Both are hard.
Okay, well, we move on to.
Oh, wait, we have some questions
Yeah.
over here.
Chief, do we have, the aerial apparatus that we have right now, can it service the tallest structure in Woodbridge?
Yes.
You said that with some hesitation.
Well, no, once again, it depends on, I was just thinking, because what you have to do is the ladder's big enough to handle the biggest building. You just gotta get close enough where you can put it up, and it depends whether you have vehicles in the way. Usually when you look at a building, right, the parking spots are right out front, so you have to be beyond that and then point it up. But the question to the answer is yes,
Okay.
100 foot.
And then for mutual aid, do we share cost with those calls?
Shared costs?
Yeah, do we give the neighboring towns anything if they provide
No.
mutual aid?
No, and we
Okay.
do the same back to them too.
Got it.
Anything else on capital?
Yes. Just for the benefit of my understanding, Engine 3 has one final year payment.
Correct.
Engine 9 is soon to be, no, we've paid 1 year out of 5.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so those are 2 newly-ish received engines. And engine 2 is a replacement request, correct?
Engine 2 is a replacement request.
Okay, so, thanks, now that I have that, just tightened up in my head. What's the difference, between these 3 engines? What purpose does 2 serve that 3 or 9 doesn't? And then, my other question is, do you have any statistics for us, like, how many calls you're,
Yes, that's gonna be in the operations
Operating,
budget, so
okay.
that's why I want.
okay,
because I know
well,
we
one
wanna
step
hear
at a
that
time,
stuff,
so, thank you.
So engine 9 is our motor vehicle piece, so all accidents, that truck rolls to every single accident.
Okay.
It carries a whole list of different equipment on the truck between extrication tools, carries Class B foam, where Engine 3 and Engine 2 cleared Class A foam. Class B foam is more for vehicle fires, combustibles, or like gas, oil, diesel fuel. It's meant to suppress the vapor at these scenes. It could also be used in like a propane fire, stuff like that. Engine 3 is our first attack engine, and that goes to all structure fires. It's a structural response vehicle. Engine 2 is also a structural response vehicle. They're both structural response vehicles. Engine 2 also goes to all CO calls, wire down calls. There's a list of calls it goes to, and it supplements Engine 3 also.
Okay.
And when one truck is out of service, the other one backs it up.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes, I'm good.
moving on to operations.
Okay. All right, so the first few lines really didn't change. The fire marshal line did change, and that's why you've shown the 32% increases, because he got a increase. We went to personnel, went to the Board of Selectmen, it got approved, that's why we're showing that. As we go down, and just stop me if I'm going too fast, medical expense is going up 7%. Reason being is every firefighter and driver is required for an annual physical every single year. So, and they go to Yale Occupational Health. Yale Occupational Health sent this a letter 2 months ago that come July, they're going to be increasing 7% on their fees. So we need to, this is something that's really non-negotiable. We have to send every person for a physical, and we have to get the clearance, so they're cleared in a calendar year. So in a 365-day window. In 366 days, if we don't have a cleared physical, we have to pull them off of duty, and they can't respond.
Does it have to be through Yale? I know the states.
So I tried to look into Hartford Health.
Yeah.
Hartford Health is really hard to deal with, and trying to get somebody to call back and to look and do a program like what we have. But Bethany Fire, a lot of other fire departments, almost everybody in the area goes to Yale. But I was looking at Hartford because Yale sometimes is hard because you go there and some of the guys have to sit and wait. So we're trying to get a little bit better because they take a day off from work to go.
I remember you've gone through this issue before. with
Right.
health.
So,
Yeah.
let's see, what else? Cleaning custodial services went up about $6,500. We have the training / storage facility going up in back of the firehouse, so I'm assuming roughly $125 a week to go in there, clean it, empty the trash cans, wipe everything down, whatever we need to do, I thought was acceptable. And I talked to the cleaning people, and that's the number they came up. They started at like 175, I got them down to roughly 125, so I didn't think that was that bad. Repair and maintenance machine 53510. So this takes care of this line. We usually go over. We've been pretty good over the last year, actually 2 years, knock on wood. We have some trucks that fell out of service this past week that are getting fixed. But next year, I anticipate this number going up, and because our vendor has told us, and we use multiple vendors, that they're going to be increasing labor costs. And on top of that, next year, we have to pull the wheels off the trucks and check the brakes and see if we need to do brakes. So we usually pull the wheels off every 2 to 3 years. So we're definitely up next year that we definitely have to pull the wheels off these trucks and check them. Repair maintenance testing. This is all DOT, NFPA, OSHA regulated testing. So this does, we have to test every pump in the firehouse on the trucks yearly. We have to test hose testing, ladder testing, fit testing, Scott bottle testing. The Scott bottles are the air packs that you wear on your back. The bottles have to get hydro tested, I believe it's next year, and the air packs get tested every single year. They informed us that an average across the board is about a 10% increase for these, all this testing. Next is repair maintenance building. So this building line, we increased to 54,000, it went up 35%. One of the things is I have a letter here, and the firehouse is getting older, it's 16 plus years old. Things are starting to break, but we're getting letters like this is from Cone A, and we have other letters I can show, but Cone A is saying that our maintenance contract is gonna go up 25.62% come July 1.
Who are they and what do they do, Sean?
It's hitting February 1st of this year, so it already hit, it's gonna go up 25.62%, just on the elevator contract.
Thank you.
It was an elevator, you know, the price goes up and down.
That was a softball.
Had to.
Rentals and equipment, so things have gone up. Oxygen canisters where we rent them, and as we use them, we swap them out and get new ones. That has gone up. We have other things that we rent have gone up, so trying just to maintain that, that's probably where we're gonna end up being this year, is closer to 22,000. Telephone, this line's always been light for the last few years. We usually spend 13.5, this is the number we need to be at, is 13.5, not at 10.850. So even though it shows a 24% increase, this is where it's been for the last 3 years, so we need to just adjust it to be where we need to be. Communications radio, this is the radio system for the town. This covers PD, FD, and Public Works. So it's in our budget. This goes for the main radio system, meaning the maintenance contract, and there's two parts of the maintenance contract. So the system is kind of smart, so you have a bunch of computers in each site. So you have to maintain the software upgrade, and there's a hardware portion also. So if something goes bad, they come in and replace the hardware at no cost. So I could tell you at one of the sites, we've already replaced everything, and it's all been covered under our maintenance contract. So it's not like we're still on the original stuff, but they have been replacing equipment as it goes, or it falls out of date and they can't upgrade it update it or upgrade it anymore. They upgrade us to the newest hardware along with the software. So let's say we opt not to want to fund that this year, right? And we say we'll fund it next year. Well, even if we fund it next year, we would have to buy the upgrade this year to upgrade next year. So we don't really have a choice here. This also covers Frontier, which are the fiber lines that go to these sites that the radio talks to. That's roughly a little over $1,700 a month.
What is that, the radio?
Yeah. Propane at some of these sites, we have two propane generators, and we have a diesel generator. So that covers the fuel for those generators. Also, we pay a monthly fee to the EMAX site up in Seymour, where that's one of our radio sites. That had an increase this year also. And our, this is gonna be our last year for our multi-year agreement with Motorola, and then we have to renegotiate it come next year. So right now, we're at $113,977, and we're gonna have to renegotiate come next year and see what that number is, but that number is probably not gonna go down. It was going up a few $1,000s every year. So I anticipate that being probably around 116, 118 come next year. Communication security, We went up, it showed went up roughly $1,000. This is the main controller for the S2 system, all the card access doors at Town Hall, Public Works, the center building, the firehouse, the old firehouse, and it's gonna be for the training/storage facility. So this is the software upgrades and that we have to keep doing and the maintenance of it. Next one
Tony,
is
is that
training.
spread out, is that spread out through the different buildings we use it here in town? It's the same system.
The same system.
So this is the fire department portion of it.
No,
No, it's the,
This is for
We
everybody.
control it
Thank
all.
you. Because it's there, it's at your location, I
Right.
understand. Thank you.
the training, we went up $5,000, and there's a couple different reasons for it. Training keeps evolving with electric vehicle training.
Sean. Professional development, conference and dues, those are up 10% each. You want to hit those two?
Yeah, so one went up $200. Our membership fees for like the Valley Fire School and stuff like that have gone up. So that's to cover the fees of that, and same thing with the dues. It went up $300. They weren't big numbers to go up. The training portion of it, once again, EMT has changed quite a bit, so now you have to do CMUs. Basically, we used to do a refresher every 3 years. Our refresher is basically it's every 2 years, but you have to do it within that 2-year period. So there's a bunch of CMUs, and there's training that you have to do with the guys, hands-on. We got to bring people in to do that. So state CTOAMS basically changed the way they did things about a year and a half ago. So it's still a work in progress, but it takes a lot of time and a
I have a
lot
question about
of.
the training actually, and it
Sure.
circles back to the question that we asked Andrea. Is I see that you've responded to 468 incident calls in 2024,
Mhm.
and then you say you have 3 members joined, 3 new people. So does the training include?
We're actually up to 5.
You're actually up to 5. So does the training include new people who are starting right from the beginning?
Correct.
And it includes the continuing education and recertification that you have to do for the people who are already there?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. Programs publicity went up 30%. We tried to keep this number down as much as we can. We're usually about $5,000. This is an interesting line because this is all about, these are the little red fire hats, the crayons, the coloring books, all this stuff that Joe goes out and he does fire prevention with in October, he goes to Beecher School, he goes to all the other schools, Montessori, and then during trick or treat, he's out handing out fire prevention stuff. So this is what that line is, solely that line. So we had some stuff in inventory, we're completely wiped out, and to do it again next year, this is the number we need to do that. Office supplies went up $200. Technical is, so we're looking for a 9.52% increase. Technical went up because all our everyday stuff goes up. So if we go to a motor vehicle accident, the speedy dry that gets applied to the road, that has gone up a few dollars a bag. We usually go through between, I'm gonna say almost 10 pallets of that a year. We also go through, there's foam is in that, drip pans, Dryzor. There's a whole list of everyday supplies that come out of that line that we need to continue to do the job.
Is there something in that, with all of the electric vehicles?
Yep.
You mentioned maybe, you alluded to it in training. Does that require different chemicals, different, I hear about these
So-
burning forever and.
So that's the big thing. So no one's really come up with a way to figure out how to actually smother it and keep it out. So if we go to a lithium ion battery fire, right, for Tesla or one of these cars, we could in theory be there 8 hours, 10 hours, and you gotta keep trying to keep the core of the battery cool enough. What there's a couple different ways. They have a blanket out there that you could put a blanket over the car and keep it wet, but it doesn't, there's no proven fact that it actually works. It helps it keep it cool, but you're there for the same amount of time. There's another machine that Rosenbauer actually makes. It slides underneath the car, and then it's like a big plug. It plunges right into the core of the battery, but to do that, you have to hit that core exactly perfect. Otherwise, you could puncture the other core while the fire's going on, and then you just make the fire spread. So they're not really realistic. So the other thing is, if you can, you get a machine, you get a dumpster, you fill it with water, you pick the car up, and you basically submerge it to keep it cool. So there's really no answer on what we do, and it's across the board on basically we do what we have to do to try to keep the fire out and to get it cleaned up as quick as possible. But if you have a fire in one of these cars, they're basically totaled anyway. But it's a lot of time.
Sounds like we're doing a lot of damage to protect the environment.
He gets credit for that one, for sure.
The other one is, you gotta, like, we also have to, when we talked about the ladder truck, the other thing I didn't mention is, you got a lot of homes now in this town that have solar on them.
Right.
So solar panels, you can't just go and throw a switch and the panel's dead, and we gotta get up there and we gotta cut a roof, we gotta cut a hole in the roof, because you wanna get the smoke and the heat and you wanna get the smoke and the heat and the gases out, so you can start putting the fire out. By not cutting a hole in the roof and allowing that to escape, all you're doing is you're making it bigger, and even though you're trying to attack it, it's like an uphill battle. You need somewhere for this to vent, and it's the same deal. Solar panels, even though you can't really shut a solar panel off because the solar panel is always hot, so the guys could get electrocuted by it if they go up on the roof. If you put an axe through it, you're gonna get electrocuted. So these are all things that we don't really know. And in a fire, what does a fire show? It has glow, so the glow actually is giving the panel more power at that point. So.
I keep going. I'm
Okay.
so depressed already. It's like, might as well finish me off.
Gear-
Susan, I've been looking around
so
at the
gear-
faces. This is by far the most depressing presentation.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to utilities yet.
Yeah,
Take
gear
a look at that.
gear replacement, it's up 82%, and gear has a 10-year shelf life. So, and this number could grow this year, but we have 16 sets of gear we need to replace based on the 10-year shelf life, which we don't have a choice. So, if somebody's gear gets red on the arms, the gear has to come out of service and it's no good anymore. That means the fire retardant came off and we have to replace it. 10 years, even if the gear looks halfway decent, has to be replaced. Years ago, we used to take the older gear and put it for the new recruits to go through the fire academy and fire training. That no longer can happen anymore. So now they have to be in gear that's within 10 years, and it's gotta fit them, so every person gets fitted to new gear. So when we take somebody on, it's a big expense. So just a set of gear, just bunker pants, the pants that the guys wear, and a jacket. That doesn't include the helmet, boots, or anything. That's about $4,500 a set.
Okay.
Is any of that
It's expensive.
integrated into the fire marshal, what are the fire marshal expenses? And there's investigation supplies and uniforms? but
Right, so that
isn't-
is down. We're gonna, fire marshal expense rate above it. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
like how is that different, the uniforms component at least, compared to what you just described?
So he's got gear. We put him underneath gear replacement.
Okay.
But these are his everyday expenses and supplies that he needs to run the fire marshal's office.
Okay.
But we share the same building, the same services and everything else, so it all gets incorporated. That's why his number is low.
Chief, what's the primary driver of the increase in the gear? I understand what goes into that, but why is it so much higher than it was previously?
Because the gear has a 10-year shelf life, and we have a lot of gear coming off, and we have a lot of new recruits coming in.
And what percentage of the total does that represent? Would you
10
ballpark?
10 sets of gear are coming, 10 sets of gear are up for the regular guys, and then we've got to figure out 6 new people coming in.
So it's pretty much a complete replacement for all the regular.
No,
No?
we have 45 sets.
That's what I was
50
wondering.
cents,
Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
10 out of the 45.
Right, but if so there's an OSHA mandate possibly coming out this year, which it was supposed to come out in October. They pushed it, where we might have to provide 2 sets of gear to every firefighter.
Even in volunteer settings?
Yes.
Eh,
So let me just clear the record. Whether you're volunteer or paid, you're doing the exact
The
same
same.
job, and you're held to the exact same
Yeah, and I didn't
standard.
mean to imply
No,
you're not
but
doing the
I
same
just
job.
wanted, because it's not clear to everybody.
Risk is the same.
Look,
Yes.
the risk is the same, well, forget about risk. Mandates are the exact same as it is from a volunteer fire department to a paid fire department. There is no, hey, I'll let you slide over here.
Yeah.
Can you help me to understand in this context, so you said there's about 45 volunteers?
45 active guys, then we have drivers. So the drivers don't need full gear.
Okay.
They have a jacket, they have gloves, they have a helmet, they have some boots.
And of the 400 or so incidents that
Mm-hmm.
you responded to, did every one of those 45 people take part in responding to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so approximately, I'm sure, I know it varies based on the incident, but how many responders what's the average number of responders per incident?
I can get
Yeah.
you that information.
Or I'm just, and I guess
On
it's
the
not mission
average-
critical,
On
I'm
the
just,
average, I'm gonna say probably 10 or 12.
okay, so a good number,
Yeah.
a good number. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. Gas is pretty self-explanatory. These are the numbers that Tony gave, and we just took our usage from last year and put it in this year. Okay, electric for the buildings. So we're at 42,000. We basically we're gonna almost spend that this year. We already spent that this year. So next year, we're anticipating about $76,800 in electric. And that has to do, our public service charge is about $15,600, somewhere in that area. We pay roughly $1,300 a month for a public service charge. And on top of not being able to control the air in the building, the air conditioning or the heat, that's the added number. Now, if you go down the natural gas,
Sean, but the HVAC that you've got in your capital budget should be addressing that, no?
it should be. So if we do that, it depends on when we do that, that number should come down. I just don't know when it's gonna come down, but I just wanna let you know that I also figured $1,000 in there for the training storage facility, just so that number also reflects that.
I was gonna ask about that,
Yeah.
so, okay, thank you.
Also, the natural gas will reflect that also.
Uh-huh.
So the natural gas at 32, we're figuring about 80. So we just got a Spark bill in today, which is Spark Energy, and I want to say that bill is roughly $4,600. And then we have our gas bill on top of that, which is usually about $800 or $900. So when we look at these things, it doesn't make sense not to do the HVAC right away, because we're spending, we calculated roughly 2 to 3, maybe more than that, thousand in what we shouldn't be having to do.
The HVAC is a kind of building maintenance, and that's something that we would do for any building that the HVAC's not working on. So that's why I'm wondering why the significant increase as far as the actual utility charges are concerned, considering that
Utility
that's something
charges,
we
Spark Energy, we anticipate, so we had a big increase. We were at like 15,000 a few years ago. Spark Energy doubled, I think it was last year, was it? It went up like 2.5 times last year, and that's how we came up to 32,000. And even if we add, let's say, 10,000 in for the storage facility, training facility, we're just eating gas left and right. And I think those numbers are gonna come way down. I just can't tell you what that number is gonna be at this point.
But what should it be? In other words, if
So I
the
can't.
units
so
are working,
you need
mechanicals
to-
are working
you're right,
correctly, what
but
should
you
it
need to
be?
realize that you have the public service charge on top of that, so that's another $15,000,
Is that-
which we didn't
Yeah,
have.
that expires in
That
April.
expires, exactly, in
April
April.
30th.
Oh, it does.
No, I don't think it expires.
No, it goes back
it's
to the nominal
adjusted.
rate.
It's
Yeah, it's
adjusted,
adjusted.
but we don't know what that adjustment is yet.
Well, no, there's, without going down a rabbit hole, the
Yeah.
increase to everybody's burning from right now is because of a temporary payment
Right.
that is set to expire on April 30th. At April 30th, they'll then renegotiate, but it should, barring any increases, go back to the nominal rate it was before. That's the entire point of the millstone agreement and all that other stuff, so.
Okay.
Do we have an ability to calculate that now?
We have to wait and see what they actually negotiate
Yeah.
Right.
in April.
So we don't have the ability until April to
Yeah, I
know
mean,
what that number
we
is.
can look at historical data
Right.
to see, but that's, that's no guarantee that it's gonna come down there.
But we'll
But it
find
should be
out
similar.
before the annual town
We'll find
meeting.
out before the public hearing.
Right. So
Anything else?
Yes,
I-
last
yeah.
one is,
I
last
don't-
one is hydrants.
I want to ask you a little bit about the utilities though first, because
Sure.
the natural gas number is very high. And that is because you're not able with the building management systems to control day and night. And if we were to replace those with the HVAC capital request, do you have a sense of how much it'll come down, or what you're
I
hoping it will
think
come
just the
down?
natural gas will come down to, I'm hoping right around 50. 45 to 50.
Okay, so right now you're showing 80, potentially, but I have no idea what the timing would be, even if we were to put it in the capital budget, it's probably, you're gonna get through most of your year before it happens.
Well, this is for next winter, so
Right.
if the repair could take place
If we could go out for an RFQ, because we
in the
have to
summer.
get bids.
And do it in time for the next
Right,
heating season.
right.
All right, and then my
This- I'm
other
sorry.
question here was for electric. There's no solar at all, right? This is straight electric costs. Is it possible to put solar on that roof if we were not obligated as part of the microgrid to not be using solar there?
We actually had a proposal to do that
Okay. And so that might
But
potentially.
that didn't go through.
because of the microgrid.
Right.
Which is being reconsidered at this point.
Right, so if we were not in, let's say we're not in microgrid any longer, how quickly could we put solar up there and start yielding some savings? Because these are very high costs and they're utilities and,
Very quickly. We're working with Titan right now. And we've already spoken with Titan about not only the fire department, but a number of other buildings in town.
yeah,
And they're ready to go when we tell them we want it.
yeah, we need
So-
relief in this budget.
So,
All right, thank you.
And what did you want to say about hydrants? Is this
Hydrants are
different
going
than
up
what you
7.5%.
I'm sorry, I have to just go back to the utilities, Susan, I'm really sorry.
said?
But
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to, because what I'm hearing, I want to make sure I understand, because it's going to impact on decisions we make very near term. And that's, you're paying considerably more for utilities because your heating system or your mechanicals at the fire
The
department are
BMS
not
system.
functioning correctly.
The BMS system has failed.
Right now.
Yes.
So, and that's, okay,
So when we had the last test with the microgrid, it finished the system off. And we can't really control it anymore. So it's usually on or off, or some days you come in, the building's cold, and we gotta
have we
manually-
had somebody look at it to give us an estimate as what it would cost to correct
Roughly,
it?
we have a rough estimate. We had a vendor come in, look at the system, look and see what needs to be done, and the number as a placeholder is right around $150,000.
So, okay, so,
Now, could
But I'm
come in
hearing
140,
something
could
else. I'm
be
hearing-
160.
I'm hearing, yes, there's that, but you're also, with these numbers, adding the new load of the new building.
Right, but that's gonna be newer equipment, so it's gonna be more efficient. Right now,
But it's still
we're
gonna
like
use.
running heat where we don't have to, but there's no way to really control it. So if you go into one bathroom, it's like 55 degrees. You go into the other bathroom, it's like 80. So.
What's
we're-
wrong with that?
Are other buildings
Well,
having
there
the
was
same
one day
issue?
we walked in and it was actually a little
Why
too cold.
this-
I
Where
get-
I was worried about pipes
Because it's
breaking.
such an
What I'm
open
trying to point out is
space.
that
you know,
even
it's a
with
bay,
the building
you know,
problem,
bays, so.
your usage.
We're still gonna
is-
go,
not
we're still gonna
controlling
go
it,
up,
it's just-
yes,
You've got a dynamic
you know.
situation here, because now you've got a whole different load, and
correct.
we've seen this natural gas issue at all the buildings and all the budget presentations in the past 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
Am I right about that? Okay, all right. Hydrants.
Hydrants are going up again. They can't tell us what, but what we're understanding, what we're hearing, it's gonna go up roughly 7.5%, and it's been going up. And that is we own the hydrants in town, just like all the other towns do. All we do is we pay for water we pay to have access to the water in the hydrant. So it goes by linear footage of the water main in town. That's how the number comes up with. And then out of that number, if we have a damaged hydrant, we have to pay for it. And that is, like, we've had a light winter when we used to have a lot of snow, especially during the blizzard. We lost like 7 or 8 hydrants, and those hydrants, between snow plows and stuff like that, they could range anywhere from an $800 fix all the way up to almost an $8,000 fix per hydrant, and we own it. Unless there's a police report that there was an accident, somebody hit the hydrant, and we go after their insurance company, but we own the hydrant, we're responsible
So
to
this
fix
is
it.
actually the dollars going to Regional Water Authority.
Correct.
Those numbers go to RWA, yes. And then the machinery, 7,500, stayed the same. That's our Monitor replacement. Those are the pagers the guys carry to notify them if there's a call on the side of the belt, and we have to replace those periodically.
Okay, other questions?
Did the fire department apply for any grants this past fiscal year?
So we applied for one grant that we thought we'd be eligible for, but we were not, so, no.
Okay. Are you in the habit of doing that?
We looked for different grants that we would be eligible for, and then we're not a town that's really eligible for a lot of grants in the fire service.
We have started through SCROG, and any grants that we started to send them to the
Right.
fire department to let them know and to see what we can do, so
I think we've looked at
anything that they
4 of
see
them
and
this
say
year.
is eligible. But
Right.
we haven't done a lot in the past.
I love the way you asked that. This is great. Very delicate. Other questions? Okay?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
There's so many that.
Yes, right, but we have to move on. Okay. Was there something else you wanted to say?
no, I
Okay.
take it offline.
Do we flag the fire hydrants in the wintertime?
Yeah, so
Like,
there's
do you
there's flags up on the hydrants, and then when the guys are in the engines or in the truck, they'll see, they can see the flag, plus they have it on GPS on their, monitors in the truck.
And all the dogs in Woodbridge and wherever it is, so not to worry about that. Okay? Karen, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
for being
thank
here.
you both.
Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did have one question. So you responded to 468 incidents fiscal year 24. Do you know how that compares to the previous year?
I don't have that number
Okay.
with me. But
Just
they-
off
it
your
all-
head, do you
it
think
all
you're getting
it all
more or
varies.
less?
So our average used to be like 425.
Okay.
Then with all the storms over the last probably decade, we've been 650, 680, almost 700, and we dropped down to 550.
Okay.
So as of like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were averaging like 425, and then we had a couple of big years and we were averaging well over 500. So
I remember
it
last year you
varies.
said that this, because people text while they're driving, that the
Yeah,
accident rate is
so-
going
Yeah.
way up.
So you're getting more
So there's more
vehicular
response.
calls.
yeah, we have a lot of, we actually do a lot of car accidents. Just one other thing, if I can say, just,
Of course.
I think all the boards and everything, and I'm just gonna speak because I really don't have a lot of big filter here. But I think it's important to note that I think all the departments, because I sit in a lot of meetings and hear a lot of different things, a lot of departments have taken a hit for a number of years to try to keep our budgets way down and try to keep it going. But I think these boards really need to look at all departments in town, not just, we gotta cut to make a number. At some point, you guys have to look at what's responsible here. And I'm not saying all the money to the schools is the best thing, because obviously the schools are a really big thing, but all these departments have taken a hit or tried to work with it for the last 6 or so years, and it's at the point where, like, I'm looking at our, like, my budget, and I'm like with vehicles and other things that come up, and I understand they're expensive, but at some point, we need to just have a plan moving forward. So, But I'd like to see with our capital budget especially is, I'd like to see a level line coming across rather than like here, we have a huge spike, we gotta pay $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 and then we're having a drop off and then we're coming back up again. I'd like to just see a consistent line so it doesn't put you guys in a tough spot where you have to explain why taxes are going up, and it doesn't put us in a tough spot where we have to sit here and try to justify a $400,000 or $500,000 increase this year, which really isn't fair for us, and it's not fair for you to have to go and explain to the townspeople what's going on here. I think when you look at the budget this year, I would hope we could somehow get on a level line so we're not showing huge spikes, whether it be in the fire department, the police department, any other departments in town. But I think you guys really need to keep that in consideration when you're looking at this, and just don't look at the bottom line anymore.
Thank you, Sean, and next year's budget, we will get you a filter.
Put it in the budget.
Thank you, thank you
Thank you.
for being very patient with all of our questions. Good to see you both. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to information systems, 11:45.
Okay.
Tony is gonna handle that.
I'll start with the capital first. And there is one item in the capital budget, which is a lease payment for the network improvements at the police department. So in '26 is full year payment, and then there's a half year in '27, and then that's paid off.
Paid off,
Yep.
okay?
And just out of curiosity, is that gonna be affected by any building changes?
Shouldn't.
Okay.
It shouldn't. I mean, if you construct a new building, you'll be infrastructure costs within a new building for wiring and such, but not necessarily the servers
Okay.
themselves.
Thing to keep in mind, though, they are computing equipment.
Yeah,
So by the time we
Finish
get
paying
through
them
that
off.
process,
you get
we'll
new
probably
ones.
have to get new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
Okay. In the operating budget, so this is where we have the third-party company that helps to manage all of our computers, both here for the town. This is the town's portion. We use the same company for the town and the police department. This is the town's portion of that contract. That's the first line. And they do everything from network issues to server issues to so that's that. The software maintenance is for all of our third-party packages that we have for all of our departments, including the tax department, the assessor, our financial system, I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch. They're listed in the detail, so you can see which ones we have. So these are mostly, they're all third-party packages that we have to get pricing on. As with all of you, I'm sure, all of our stuff is mostly in the cloud, which is what all of that is.
And so
Most of our stuff's in the cloud.
Tony, the cost of this stuff has just gone up, is that why?
I would say a lot of it's gone up because of cybersecurity issues. And also, once you have a software package, it's somewhat difficult to change. And so they sort of know that. I mean, that's no surprise to anybody here. You probably all have the same issue.
Then you gotta update it.
So
Then you
you-
have to pay for the updates.
Right,
Boom, boom, boom.
right.
Tony, at one time,
But
at one time we talked about so we have a Munis package, and then does Beecher Road School still have a separate Munis?
no, they're under our umbrella.
So this is a school
the-
bus as well here?
We just prorate the charge. This is our charge.
Okay.
We prorate
it's in
theirs.
theirs as well.
Yeah,
Ah,
right.
okay.
So we're under the same contract. We prorate it based on number of seats,
Right.
users.
That's
so-
cheaper than having two separate contracts.
Correct.
which
And we have
works out.
we have the same database also.
Good,
So we don't have, it's not two separate contracts.
Any other questions on information systems?
I had a question about software upgrades, and I know we've discussed previously about the move from the .org to.
Right, that's what that big
That's
increase is.
Right, so
Right.
then the Microsoft 365 and email, so I know we had previously talked, but this is for next year's budget. Is it possible that we could expand so that we have email addresses on the town server for the Board of Selectmen, maybe Board of Finance if you wanted, but Board of Selectmen primarily, because I know we're getting requests for being able to produce documents.
So there's
either
a-
for FOI or other.
Sure, so
needs.
certainly, we just need to add it to the budget, and if that's what the board would like to do, it's certainly possible. It's depending on, I would imagine you would probably just want there's two different versions. There's the version with just email,
Right.
and then there's a version with email and Word and Excel and Outlook and all the other
Well, the
programs
SharePoint-
associated with it.
Because we're using the
So-
SharePoint, and if we don't have personal access.
It would
to
just come
Share-
with probably Outlook,
Right,
the SharePoint.
Outlook
Yeah,
and SharePoint.
yeah, but not Word and Excel
Yeah,
and
we
all the other stuff.
Okay, and
Right.
so is it possible to know like what per seat that would, is it like?
It's like $15 a month
or
per
something?
person, correct?
We've
I
looked
talked
at
to
it.
an
and
IT
it's-
person in my household who told me that was my
Right.
son.
That's right, so if you choose to do that,
That's-
we
you could
just add it to the budget.
11-year-old. That's actually not a bad idea.
Well, he
Once you-
turned 28 yesterday, so we could.
We don't even need that.
He used to
We
be
just need
11
an
though, Susan,
11-year-old.
maybe the last time you saw him.
We did,
Labor laws make it.
as Tony said, we have looked at it. It is something we're planning for either the 12th or the 8th, the 26th to talk about in the Board of Selectmen. Probably the 12th, because it's got to be part of the budget and see what we can
Right.
do along those lines.
So you would, during
Certainly
your
not
budget
anytime
discussion,
anything.
that's the time to decide, how
Okay.
many licenses you would like and how many to add to the budget.
It hasn't been done because it hasn't needed to be done, but it's certainly something we can discuss.
Time might be here. And then that changeover to .gov is happening, do we know when?
I think that probably by April,
Looking at Karen just to make sure
Am I
she's
right on
not
that?
jumping out the window right now.
April, about that neighborhood,
Some-
hopefully. Definitely before the end of the fiscal year.
Thank
Then
you.
when we tell them, we'll pay them for it.
Ah.
That's a better word.
Anything else on information systems? Otherwise we'll move to employee fringe benefits.
Okay. Employee fringe benefits are a function of what policies are set in the rest of the budget, right? So, FICA and Medicare are reflective of the salaries that are in all the other budgets. So to the extent you add a new position or take a position away, that's reflected in these figures. Same with
Wait.
retirement.
So Tony, I'm sorry,
Sure.
I'm just not sure I understood that explanation.
So-
Meaning this is duplicative or it's
No, so
not?
basically what I do is I take all of the salary requests throughout the budget and take 6.2% for FICA and 1.45% for Medicare. So if you, for instance, there's a new position in the police department, there's a new position in the parks department, there's, throughout the budget, those are reflected
Okay.
in those numbers.
Thank
This
you.
is if all of
So
those
it's,
positions were filled.
Correct.
it's based on the requests.
Correct,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if you remove a position, it'll have an impact also on FICA and Medicare. If it's a full-time position, it has an impact on retirement. The town is 16.68%. It's a defined benefit plan that's run by the state of Connecticut, similar to the state employees, where when the employee retires, they get a percentage of their pay based on how many years they've been at town. And so we have to pay a salary match as part of that. So for the general employees, it's 16.68, and for police, it's 24.1. So 24 cents of every dollar of a police officer's salary is paid for retirement. Just so you know.
And Tony, have those, are those negotiated?
These are negotiated by the comptroller's office.
Okay.
They're not negotiated by the towns.
Okay.
And it's very difficult, pretty much impossible to leave the plan.
So I'm just wondering, because I know at the state level, there's different tiers
So-
of retirement,
so
and they've recently
for many
really
years,
reduced.
if you could picture, this is paid by the towns, but
Yeah.
controlled by the state.
Yeah,
So the state has absolutely no will
Incentive.
or incentive to change it, because they're not paying for it.
so they're not doing the same thing they're doing at
Except
the, at
for
the-
last year,
Sean
the
Scanlon.
comptroller, Sean Scanlon, finally made some improvements. And they're doing a second round of improvements, I hope to create a second tier.
Yeah, wow.
Hope.
I'm in tier 4A for the state, just so
So.
you know. And
You're part of the problem.
no, I'm part of the solution. Really.
We've been
Tier
complaining,
4 of the problem.
we've been complaining about this for many,
As
many
they should.
years,
Yep,
as Beth knows.
begging legislators, totally ignored.
You elect them, right?
Any other questions on
Yep.
fringe benefits?
We're doing a bad
Tony,
job.
the increase for insurance for police, why is it so much bigger than everybody else, you know?
So, it's based on an extra position. There's a new position in police
Okay.
that's requested by the chief. So, that's a big reason why theirs is, higher.
That's the extra full-time that he asked us for in his. got
Right,
it.
so I have to put the healthcare in.
Thank you.
Also.
But that's based on an assumption, right? That of a certain healthcare package.
Correct.
Okay.
I have to make an assumption. Generally, when we hire new officers, they have single coverage. That's what I assumed.
Okay.
And also with police, their contract's still under negotiation, so the plan's a little different. The premium shares are a little different. So that's also a reason why it's a little higher.
And Tony, that's here
And we're
rather
currently
than contingency, where the rest of the contract impact
Well,
would be in contingency, right?
Correct. But here I have their the existing plan.
Okay. Oh,
The new plan for the town, we increased the premium shares a little, premium shares. We changed the plan a little bit so it's not, have quite as much benefit. So that's why it's a little lower.
Okay, anything else on that, or can we move on to debt service, which is tab 1810?
Okay. And what's one other thing? These numbers will be changing as we get closer, as every year we get closer. Yeah,
Okay,
okay. Debt service. So the big highlight in debt service this year is the payment for, the addition of the payment for the work at the school, which would be the roof and the site work, and the interest related to that. So you can see that there's the payment, 150,000 and 57,000 in interest. So I also included in the folder just a little snapshot of our 10-year snapshot of our debt service. And what I'd like to do is, once you have a better idea of where the project is for the school, to create a more detailed sort of analysis of our debt service and where we are and how it compares to other towns and other indicators, fiscal indicators, I think would be helpful. As you can see here, it's pretty manageable. It's in comparison to how it's been in the past in terms of the amount of debt service that we do have. And all the other thing to note is the Amity's debt also declined significantly. This year it did, and then next year as well.
so Tony, does that take into account Amity's plan?
It does not, I don't have any information on that, so as soon as I have information on that, I'll add that into this, just so we have an idea of, where our debt obligations are for Amity.
Okay, so, and then you've also got the Beecher Roof and Grounds, 2024 and then 2025 in the future scenario?
right.
So there's part of it that's not,
We haven't finished the borrowing yet. So it's mostly for the grounds, I think, because the roof's gonna be covered by the state grant, so I think most of that's borrowed, right. But the grounds, we didn't really borrow too much, we issued notes because we weren't really sure,
which we get
how
to.
much, at that point, we didn't have, I don't think we had the contract yet, that wasn't until this summer, so that's an estimate.
And then up above in the Beecher renovation, you've got 2015 and then 2016. That's the same project, just
We borrowed
bonded two
two
different
different times, correct.
Okay.
So,
The Amity debt service is subject to the same population fluctuations?
Correct. Every year I adjust the percentages based on our population, our percentage of the budget.
And the other towns are sitting there calculating it. When do they want to vote for?
Well, it is part of the calculation
Yeah,
of when they're putting things on.
It's almost a game to make sure the other towns pay for your job, for your debt service. I mean,
Yes,
really,
and we should be in that game.
Clearly, we're getting that right now when we have an enormous Amity increase, while the other towns have almost none. So we're
Or
paying for
decrease.
that kind of debt service.
This year and next, they
And
told
next,
us.
you know, so that,
That's the kind of feedback to the Amity board that we should be providing, because they're doing that in Orange and Bethany. So we gotta speak up.
The other thing I will just note is, to the extent that we add on new debt, to be mindful of the fact that the radio upgrade is paid off in 2029, and the country club purchase in 2032.
Was that rebonded in 21 or, because didn't we, why is that
We
for
issued
2021?
notes.
Radio?
We issued for the
I'm
country
sorry,
club.
the country club.
Yeah, so we issued notes from the moment we purchased it.
In 09?
In 09 through 2021. So when
Okay.
we issue notes, we paid a portion of the principal off each year, but the interest changed yearly. Because the thought was that at some point we would be able to pay off those notes with some kind of a purchase or something. Which didn't happen, so eventually we had to lock in we wanted to lock that in when the rates were low,
Yeah.
which is what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's nice to see that end in sight.
right.
Yes, it did. Other questions?
Yeah, quick question, speaking of end in sight though, the two Beecher renovations from 2015, 2016, those are both gonna drop off in 2036?
Right, 35, 36.
35 and 36, so they'll
Re-
stagger on their way out as
Correct,
well.
right. I think this is like the last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a few years still to pay on that. And then what you've got is a $10 million bond, you've got two $10 million
I just like to
bonds.
do that just to show
Just
you
an
what an impact
exercise.
that would have as an exercise. Well, once we have a better idea of the school, I can include that and maybe some estimates for the police facility to give you a better picture of what that would actually look like.
And is it possible for us to think, not tonight, but at the next meeting, about what it might look like if we were to bond some fire equipment?
You could,
Because fire
we-
equipment is
That's
starting to
gonna
get
be the
so
question.
you
expensive.
could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could certainly borrow fire equipment. We weren't, when we issued some of those, we leased them for a few reasons. First, we weren't borrowing at the time, so we didn't want to incur borrowing costs for a, $900,000 truck. And secondly, lease rates actually were at or maybe a little lower than bond rates at the
Right.
time.
Right,
Right.
but that's the strategic piece of that.
Right.
She was exactly
Right.
on the point
Right.
there,
Just so we can smooth again.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you could certainly borrow, and many communities do borrow for fire apparatus.
Tony, have you, how about the police building center, whatever
Mm-hmm.
the building committee is proposing for that? Might that be captured in the 10
It would.
million? Okay.
Yeah, I would capture that in this analysis as well.
Okay, so that is reflected.
So it's sort of
Theoretically
kind of a
reflected.
worst case
No.
situation.
Okay.
Maybe
No,
not a
this
worst
is-
case,
Cases,
but-
no, not, in other
Not in
words.
this one.
Correct.
If we were to,
Oh.
if I was to come up with another, once we know about the school,
Oh, I see.
then I think I could put together a complete picture.
Okay, so
And
you,
we could project in terms of what we're looking at.
Because you'll have all your
because we'd be
needs on the
bonding
table.
together, I'd imagine, with the school and
Not
these.
necessarily, but you would be able to smooth out the best you can the debt service so that we try to avoid spikes and, try to sort of layer it in so that you have payments dropping off and payments coming on and
Right. That's what-
timing of construction. And just because you approve of a project, then you have to go through the project, then you don't borrow until like the end. Sometimes you borrow halfway through.
Right.
And
Which
how
is-
we do the project is gonna have an impact, particularly where the center building is concerned. If we do the police facility, you can kind of budget and project for that. And then that gives us the opportunity to move things so that we can kind of phase in.
Stagger, yeah.
Stagger's a better word, the others, so you don't have, like Tony said, you don't have the spikes and things of that nature. So that's all kind of being considered. It's not reflected on this, so I didn't want you to think it was in here.
That's certainly what we did with the Beecher renovation from
We did.
2015, 2016.
Right.
That, we were watching some Beecher other funding, the kindergarten wing actually drop off.
It matched perfectly.
Yes.
One dropped off, one came on, and it was.
So if you were doing that, we wouldn't
Yeah.
be doing Beecher until
That's why we have a
2035.
finance office.
Yeah,
Right.
thank
Right.
goodness.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other questions or thoughts for tonight on anything we've heard? Okay, our next.
Oh, I'm
step-
sorry,
oh,
I'm sorry, I do have one more thing to go over. If you go into your folder, if you go to the very bottom, you'll notice two documents. One is the requested budget summary, and one is a requested budget tax calculations.
Those are new.
So if you open up the requested budget summary, the first one,
Oh, I see.
this outlines, this will bring together all of the requests with the grand list and the revenues. And you'll see here that the total expenditures, if you look at the sheet, is a 9.23% increase. And you can see all the departments that you were presented to you when there are increases in the increase column. Okay, and then you have the revenues, which we're still waiting on the intergovernmental revenues, but these are all the revenues, which is a 1% increase. Therefore, you have a amount to be raised by taxes of 10% increase. This is all the requests that you just saw. Then the grand list is a 44.63% increase, and therefore you'll see the two mill rates, 34.41 and 32.46. So this sort of gives you a snapshot of how this all comes together. If then if you look at the tax calculations, it's the same information, just presented a little differently. So the expenditures are just summarized by major department, major subject group, and you still get the same 9.23% increase and 1.01% increase in non-tax revenues, giving you a 10.19% increase in amount to be raised in taxes. Then you have a detail on the grand list, so you can see the increases or decreases that Marcia presented. And then once you go through the grand list, we have a reserve that we set for uncollected taxes. So essentially we have to create a reserve so that we collect enough in tax revenue for those who don't pay. Then we have a reserve for a firefighter tax abatement and a reserve for an elderly tax stabilization program. Those are identified there, and so you have the same information.
And there'll be elements of this and details of this that we'll be going over at the Board of Selectmen meeting on next Wednesday.
So that negative, with the mill rate for real estate and personal property, 34.41.
Right.
That negative 25.89%, can you just
Sure.
define that for
The
me?
previous mill rate was 46.43.
Oh, that's just the difference
It's
in
just
mill
the
rates.
difference, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Is it next Wednesday also the
Tri board.
meeting?
yeah.
Okay.
But this is
Where-
as
which
if we're
is good.
accepting everything
That's if you
as-
give
yeah.
everybody everything they asked for.
And so this would yield a mill rate reduction and therefore a tax
The
break,
tax.
even though it's
No.
10.19%.
We're gonna,
The-
I just so
The
I
budget is
understand.
increasing,
Yeah.
so we're going to need to raise more. It just means mill rate wise goes down in terms, the mill rate's basically the factor by which we need to multiply in order to come to the amount of taxes we require. So,
Okay.
but that being said, because of the revaluation, there's been a redistribution of the tax. Can you please help get me wrong?
Yeah, so if I could explain, the amount that the government needs, that the town government needs to raise in order to run its operations and taxes is increasing 10%.
Yeah.
Okay,
Too much.
over the previous year. The mill rate helps each individual taxpayer identify what their tax
What
burden
their
is
piece is.
based on the value of their property.
Right. All right, thank you.
So the new grand list, if we had exactly the same budget as last year with this new grand list, the mill rate
The
would
mill
be
was,
something
I
about 31,
calculated that, it's
something like
30,
that.
yeah.
What would it be? I didn't hear you.
It's 30, basically 30, it's like 30.01.
Right.
but the
30.0.
work of figuring out
30.02,
where we
somewhere around
be
30.
To, you know, with all, just because somebody asked for something doesn't mean
Right.
they're gonna get it.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
factor
Right.
number
Right.
one.
Right.
Factor number two is that we have to find that delta
Yep.
where we find what we can, fund, and then what adjustment do we make on the mill rate to make that happen, given where that is, and that process has not yet happened.
Right.
So,
Right.
for clarity, we're not walking out of here with a mill rate, okay?
Not that
Nor
one.
are we walking out of here with a set budget. We have raw data, and that's what we're all gonna chew on,
It's gonna get evaluated.
okay, for the next several weeks. Now, to the
For another
point,
week.
to that point,
Next one.
we were gonna chew on it. You have a Board of Selectmen meeting, we have a couple Board of Finance meetings, but I wanna be clear for everybody. The preliminary hearing is on April 24th, Thursday, not a Monday. And the,
May 19th is the town
May
meeting.
19th is the town meeting.
Right.
Couldn't think of what it was called.
And the Amity referendum's before that.
Don't confuse me, Sheila. May
Sorry.
19th is the town meeting. And when is the Amity referendum?
It was usually the 6th,
I have
first
no idea when
Tuesday.
it is. Don't confuse, we don't know, we don't know.
First Tuesday?
Yeah,
first
it's usually the
Wednesday?
first Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, so the 6th,
Okay? So make sure your calendars have those
right.
evenings blocked off.
Can I ask one quick question about any additional information we'll have between now and our meeting next Wednesday? Will we know a Beecher number that
No,
night?
there was no numbers being discussed at that first tri-board meeting. It's just a status update regarding planning and where they are and the information that they've gathered.
Okay, so in terms of the capital budget, are we looking to make a decision that same night, later that evening, on what we want to put into the capital budget for next year?
For the Beecher School? That's
Well,
probably
Beecher and the police station and the center bill, all of it.
Do we have enough information?
It sounds like we will not.
Well, on all of them. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my question as well.
Without the Beecher number, it doesn't feel like we have enough information.
We
Well,
don't,
yeah.
we can't. We
Okay.
can't discuss those. That's something we can't
Yeah.
define those, let's put it that way. It's
Right.
something we can.
You have to make a recommended budget by March 1st.
Correct. So we won't have the information we
The charter
need to
says.
include those in the overall budget. However, they're significant enough that we'll have to do what we need to do when the time comes and we have the information that's appropriate.
So, but are we gonna have the number by March 1st, or are we just gonna guess between now and March 1st?
I don't
Guess.
think that if there's gonna be any guesswork. They're still working on the plans. I mean, the whole process, they probably will not have numbers, according to their timeline and final designs to present to all of the boards till April.
Okay, so
And that's
no
optimistic, correct?
I
time
think that that's
for our
pretty
budget.
reasonable based on what update that they'll give us next week. But-
Correct, I'm sorry, Maria.
But right now, it's April that they'll have final designs ready to present.
Right,
And
so,
correct me if I'm wrong, for the funding that's required to do that type of job, we would bond for it.
Correct, you would bond for
In which case, we
it.
would ultimately have to go to the public
Right.
in a meeting and get it approved. So we don't have the information to be able to do anything at our meeting next week, is really what it boils down to. We're not factoring that into that.
right, so the payment on that potential, if it were to pass in referendum, it's not next year's budget at all that it's
No.
gonna hit.
No.
So we're talking about
Yeah,
out
so
years.
for
Yeah.
clarity, in case anybody's listening to this, the Beecher project that you guys are referring to is the longer term capital, big change, what needs to be done, do we need to do anything? It's
Yes.
from 30,000 feet,
Yeah.
okay? That's different, obviously, than the budget cycle that we're talking about right here. Two separate creatures walking
Correct.
around the house here, okay? Okay, Javier.
I had a question for Tony going back to debt service.
Yeah.
Sure.
If my math is right, we're at about 2.83% of our budget is going to debt service.
Right.
Do we have any idea how much room we have
So you
to
should.
maintain our bond ratings?
There is. Generally, there's several fiscal indicators to retain our bond rating that we look at. One is that your debt service and your capital should be no more than 10% of your budget. So that's one thing we'll look at. Your debt per capita, your debt as a percentage of your grand list, which just got improved, and your debt is another one. Grand list per capita. There's a couple others that I'll present when I present the debt information.
I was just curious how much borrowing power we have.
Good question.
Yeah.
Run out of road.
Not a good question. Okay, anything else for tonight? I move that the Board of Finance adjourns.
Second.
Dwight is seconding, all in favor, woo-hoo, okay.
I'll move that I'll take a motion for the Board of Selectmen adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Nice job tonight, everybody.
Beth, we should just give you the honorary